we start to only seek out things that we know we can do really well because we're going to get that, gold star stamp of approval. There are a lot of dreams kind of dying on the floor because we couldn't get all the way to the level we wanted. And so we're just not doing it. The imagined audience in your head is holding you to a standard that your actual audience almost certainly does not have. You can't know what a book will be until it's written, right? And the only way to find out if you can do it well is to do it imperfectly. This is episode 449 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, the all or nothing trap. So I'm going to tell you a little story today to start this episode. I'm sitting here at my desk. It's kind of late on a Wednesday afternoon as I'm recording. And I have been procrastinating starting this episode like there's no tomorrow because I am not sure I want to tell the story, but I'm going to do it. It's so embarrassing to me to think that this is still something that I am talking about as not yet done. Like, I really consider myself to be somebody who, when I have an idea, I have a lot of initiative, I have a lot of follow through, I have grit and stamina, like I get things done. Okay. And this thing is a block. There's just no way around it. It is a block for me. It's not a block for everyone, but it's a block for me. And that is that I have wanted to write a book for, let's say, most of my adult life. Okay. And I know lots of people harbor this dream as kind of like a wispy idea. Like, wouldn't it be great to write a book one day? But I'm not talking about that kind of thing. Like, I have seriously wanted this for so long. In the way, like, you've thought about what it would be called. You've thought about what it would be about and who it would help. And I have had tons of ideas, candidly, too many ideas. I think that's part of the problem. I have had material, like I have so much material. I have 15 years of material that I have written or recorded that I could draw from, right? By every measure, everybody who has a business like mine has a book. Like, this book should exist. And it doesn't. And for a long time, I told myself that the reason was I didn't have time. Like, that was a pretty easy excuse. But I know that's not true because I spend a lot of my coaching efforts like helping people find time for the things that they really care about. I've told myself that the idea wasn't ready, or that the market had changed and people aren't buying books anymore, which is not true, or that the timing was off, right? Any number of things that kind of sounded reasonable enough that I could buy myself some more time to not do it and feel like just okay enough about it that I didn't feel just compelled forward. But here's what's actually true. Like, as I've thought about this and really tried to diagnose like what is actually going on, I haven't written it because I couldn't figure out how to write it the way I wanted to write it. I had a vision in my head that was clear and compelling and like just exactly right. And I knew how it would land in the market. And it felt so specific. And it felt like so demanding almost that I couldn't figure out how to start without already knowing exactly how I would get to the finish. And not being able to guarantee that I could get to that place, like to the sort of photo finish that I'd imagined in my mind where, the book launches and it's successful and it's well received and well reviewed. Like, if I couldn't guarantee that, then that was enough to keep me from starting at all. Just not going to do it. No guarantee of perfect. Great. We just won't do it. Nothing. Right. And that's the trap that I want to talk about today. I thought for a long time about what is the story I want to tell. And I had lots of little sanitized stories that I could have told, but like, that's the real one for me. The real one for me where this pattern is showing up in my own life is the book. And before you tell yourself that this doesn't apply to you, like before you say, oh, I don't fall into the all or nothing trap, let me paint just like another picture or two of how I see this show up. And then you can decide, is this something that is in your way or not? I have seen people, maybe you had a workout routine that you loved back before you had kids and it worked and you felt good and you did it regularly. And then life happened, right? Probably you had kids, but it could be you had a stretch of really busy travel where you traveled a lot for work, or there was a really busy season at work, or you had an injury, right? Or you had a child who wasn't sleeping through the night. Like your routine broke somehow. And when you tried to get back into it, the version you came back to looked different than the version that you'd left. And that, that gap was troublesome, right? You just couldn't get to the gym as often, or that class was at a certain time and you couldn't figure out how to get there, or the hour that you used to set aside just evaporated, right? And so rather than do any kind of modified or abbreviated version of it, you just didn't do it at all. By the way, remember the modifiers in all the workout videos? Like before everything went online, we had the video versions of these. There was a modifier. I never wanted to be the modifier. I think that's telling. Probably people who didn't want to be the modifier also are really prone to this all or nothing thinking. Like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all the way. I think another place I see this show up a lot is meal planning. I have talked to so many women back when I had Nourish as my first business and in Brilliant Balance about really just full out shame over meal planning. Like you have a vision of what feeding your family well is supposed to look like. Meals are all planned on the weekend and there's fresh ingredients and you're having something different every night and everybody's nutritional needs are met and everyone's taste preferences are met. And when you kind of run the numbers on what it takes to do that in any given week, the planning, the shopping, the executing, you're like, I can't do it. So you just don't do it, right? And then it's like, there isn't any kind of modification to that. It's like, if I can't do it right, why bother? That's the all or nothing trap. And I think that this has a really high cost for so many of us. There are a lot of dreams kind of dying on the floor because we couldn't get all the way to the level we wanted. And so we're just not doing it. The technical term for this is dichotomous thinking, right? Dichotomous thinking. Psychologists have a name for this pattern because it's actually that common. And I think it was first identified by Aaron Beck, who was sort of the father of cognitive behavioral therapy. And when he was looking at what the cognitive distortions are that humans experience, this idea of black and white thinking, all or nothing, no middle ground, was one of the primary cognitive distortions that he unearthed. And I think the uncomfortable truth is that this isn't even a flaw in our system, it's a feature. This is like a feature of how our brains were designed. And so we're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle here to get ourselves to the other side of all or nothing thinking. So I want to talk about a few causes of this pattern of thinking so you can maybe have some self-compassion of how you got to this in the first place. And then I think once we know how we got here, we stand a better chance of knowing what are we going to do about it. Okay. So the first cause of this pattern of thinking is really evolutionary. Our brains are wired for binary thinking because it's fast, right? We can make decisions like A or B, good or bad, safe, dangerous, all, nothing. And in the context of actual survival, when the question was whether that shadow in the trees was a predator, the nuance was not helpful. We didn't want to be second guessing ourselves and really making sure we were right. It was like quick binary call. Those were the people who survived. And the brain that started sort of looking for the full spectrum of possibilities, I think that person became dinner, right? For whatever predator was lurking in the trees. So we're walking around with this ancient survival kind of hardware in our brains, but we're trying to navigate the complexities of modern life. And that hardwiring in our brain keeps defaulting to all or nothing, A or B, black or white, this or that. And that is, if you really look around at how many times you find yourself establishing what I would call a false binary, right? It isn't actually a binary decision, but we're treating it as one. This is part of the roots of that pattern. The second thing has nothing to do with evolution. It really has more to do with the way that you grew up. Like, this is the classic nature nurture, right? The nature part of it is, this is biology. All or nothing is hardwired in from an evolutionary standpoint. But what standard you internalized growing up is important here and very much at play. So I think some of us were taught that sometimes this was explicitly and sometimes implicitly that excellence mattered, right? Effort without excellence, who cares? Like, this is the adage of like, if this is worth doing, it's worth doing well. Maybe it came from a parent who praised results over effort. Like that's can be in the mix. Maybe it's you had teachers who really always noticed the A's, but they didn't notice anything else. Or like there's a winning mattered. Like you had a coach where it was like, look, if you didn't win, you lost. Like it doesn't matter how well we played. It doesn't matter what kind of progress the team is making. It's like, this is a win-lose sort of situation and we only care about wins. That can cause us to absorb the message that if we can't do it exactly the way we want to do it, maybe we just shouldn't do it at all, right? Maybe you have a child where you see this pattern in them where they're like, if I can't be great, I'm just not going to do it. And it can keep us from trying things. It can keep us from building new skills or getting into new activities or learning new things. It's really pretty rooted in fixed mindset. But anything short of like perfect sort of gets called failure, right? That win-loss culture. I think high achievers, people with a history of high achievement, are especially vulnerable here. The research on this shows that like 70% of high achieving professionals use achievement, like the mark of achievement, some sort of tangible mark of achievement, to get the validation that they didn't have growing up. Like when we look at high achievers and we say, why are you driving yourself so hard? They're looking, 70% of them say, it's because this is giving me validation that I didn't get. And so that standard that we're chasing of like wanting to be recognized, first it's external, but then it's internal. It becomes how we measure our own worth. So we start to only seek out things that we know we can do really well because we're going to get that, gold star stamp of approval. I always say we love our shiny gold stars. And we're not going to do the things where we're not sure we're going to get that. It's almost like I think of it as it's almost like we're protecting our own effort. We don't want to waste effort on things that aren't going to get us the reward. And I think, if I'm honest, I think that's at play with me in places where I'm holding back. It's like you want the sure bet if possible. And the third cause of this pattern of behavior is referred to as socially prescribed perfectionism. Right? Socially prescribed perfectionism. That's the psychological term. This one is really insidious. And it's the one that I think I see the most often in the women that I work with inside of Brilliant Balance. And it's not just holding yourself to an impossible standard, which it definitely is that. But it's also believing that other people expect that standard from you. Like you're sort of transferring your own expectations and projecting them onto other people, right? What will people think if I only go for a 20-minute walk instead of doing this 90-minute hardcore workout at the gym, right? What will my family think if I'm serving this simple thing for dinner and not the elaborate thing that, my brain is telling me I have to do? That, like the imagined audience in your head, is holding you to a standard that your actual audience almost certainly does not have, right? I see this just over and over again where women are like taking their own internalized perfectionism, projecting it onto other people and almost blaming them, like saying, well, this is the expectation that, my spouse has, my mother has, the neighbors have, whatever. Because that imagined audience has enormous power over us. We will do a lot to get the affection of the crowd. And it also will keep us doing nothing if we think we're risking doing something imperfect in front of that audience. Okay. So all three of these causes lead us to the same trap, whether we're dealing with our biological wiring, right? The wiring for binary thinking, whether we're looking at a standard of excellence that we internalized when we were growing up, like this is how I get praise and affection and love, or whether we are projecting our own perfectionistic tendencies onto other people, it all leads to the same trap. It leads to this all or nothing pattern of behavior. Okay, so let's go back to the book. I want to talk a little bit about what do you do to get some degree of freedom from this? Is it possible? And when I finally looked really honestly at what was happening, right, I had to admit it wasn't about time. It just wasn't. I mean, I have time to do everything I actually want to do, or I will make time, right? It wasn't about having the right idea. I mean, I think it kind of was like I have been waiting for a guarantee that this is exactly the right idea, and I wanted to know before I even started that what I would produce would live up to my own vision. So you can hear all of those patterns, right? And of course, that guarantee doesn't exist. Like anything we're going to do that's worth doing, we're going to take a chance at not knowing. We're going to have some tolerance for uncertainty. You can't know what a book will be until it's written, right? And the only way to find out if you can do it well is to do it like imperfectly at first. I've been talking about imperfect action within various coaching programs for a long time. And it usually is a really mind-opening idea for people who are really prone to this pattern of behavior. So here's what I started doing. I started taking my own advice, and I don't have a published book, and I'm not announcing that there's a book coming out today. But the all version would be like the published book that is well received. It lands on some kind of bestseller list. I'm really proud of it, like all of that. I'm holding out for that version, but I've started, right? I'm not paralyzed and doing nothing and just lying to myself and saying it's not the right time for another decade. What I have now is I have an outline, right? I have chapters scoped out. I have a direction. I have a voice and a tone, I think, for how I want to write this thing. I have a few things written, like a few things actually fleshed out. I started the Substack, which got me in the practice of writing, right? I was really pretty far away from the practice of writing for a while because, and I said this early in the Substack, like podcasting had taken over. Podcasting is so, for me, easy. I'm just talking. Like I can talk all day. So writing is different. Writing is like crafting. It's choosing these words with such care and such precision. And I was really out of that practice. And I think honestly, I was a little scared about getting back into it. But the Substack was like, okay, that is a toe back in the water of, do I remember how to do this? Can I write anything I'm proud of? So a couple of those essays have started to be like, yeah, I'm proud of that. So this is something in between having nothing, like I'm not writing at all, and I have a published book that I am proud of, that people are buying, that is out in the world. And having something in the middle has its own like gravitational pull. I feel magnetized toward it. Action begets action. So starting, even imperfectly, creates a level of momentum that doing nothing is just never going to do, right? When we are doing nothing, we're dealing with the law of inertia. So an object at rest will remain at rest, right? As soon as you start to do something, anything, any step in the direction of the dream, momentum starts to kick in behind you. And it is a very powerful force, and one that I really want all of us to experience. So the question I want you to sit with is, what is your book? What is, not your literal book, but what is your version of this? What is the thing that you have not done because you couldn't figure out how to do it exactly right? Maybe those examples I gave earlier, maybe it is the exercise routine. That question came up in a speaking engagement I did recently. Somebody who's a newer mom was like, look, I just can't figure it out again now that I have a kid. Totally get it, right? She hasn't started up again because it doesn't look like it used to. Maybe it is for you meal planning or cooking or figuring out how I'm going to get good food on the table. What's the project? What's the practice? What's the thing that you have been putting off until you could show up to it perfectly? And then my question for you is, what is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your mind? What is in between that perfect version in your where it is exactly right, right? You have perfectly balanced, beautifully presented meals on the table that you've planned in advance, that have full recipes, and everyone is just oohing and eyeing over how amazing they are. What's between that and nothing, right? How could you take a couple of steps toward the direction that you want to head? And that middle ground is real. That is real. That is holy ground, right? It's not settling. It's not giving up on the standard of excellence. You don't have to give up. You're just moving toward it. And it's actually the only path that gets you anywhere. The perfect version, if it ever arrives, is sort of refined from the imperfect version that you were willing to start with. Right? So I don't need a published book today. I need the practice of writing to be back in my life, and I need a direction. I'm really happy that I have an outline and some chapters scoped, and I know, like, okay, if I'm gonna sit down to write, I'm gonna write toward that versus I'm just staring at a blank page and a blinking cursor. Right? It's just makes me shudder. A blank page and a blinking cursor is not fun. So again, if you're thinking about any of these projects or practices, maybe it's cleaning out your closet, maybe it's the garage, right? There's something, I know there is something that you have said, because I cannot do this perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. And I want you to find something in between, all and nothing, and take a step in that direction. Very powerful forces sort of rise up to meet you when you do. Okay. Now, if this episode resonated with you, great. I'm delighted. And I want you to go take action. And if, as you were listening to this episode, someone else came to mind that you're like, I need to get this into that person's hands, forward this episode. Just send them a text and drop them the link to this episode and say, I want you to listen to this. Because sometimes hearing it from someone other than you is the thing that will help get the process into motion. So many of us get stuck. If this is the reason you see yourself or somebody that you care about getting stuck, put the resource in their hands. Let's see if we can help each other find middle ground and build some momentum. All right, that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.